Gotta admit, today's deep dive is going to get kind of personal.
Yeah, a little bit.
But you know what they say, knowledge is power, right?
Check.
You want to know how erections work, and we've got the inside scoop straight from the Institute of Human Anatomy.
Some fascinating insights.
We're going way past the birds and the bees today.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking anatomy, nerves, even some brain chemistry.
It's really remarkable how interconnected our bodies and minds are when it comes to this.
So before we get to the how, let's start with the what.
Okay.
How would you define an erection?
Well, in the simplest terms, an erection is the enlargement and stiffening of the penis. It's a physiological change, and it's primarily driven by blood flow to the area.
Got it. So blood flow is key. But what triggers that whole process? Is it all just, physical?
Well, that's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Erections can be triggered in two main ways: psychological stimulation from the brain, and, yes, physical stimulation of the genitals.
Wait, so my thoughts alone can cause an erection. Like, what are we talking about here?
The range of psychological triggers is surprisingly broad. Visual cues, sounds, smells, even imagined scenarios. Anything that gets the mind going can potentially play a role.
That's kind of wild. So it's not just about physical touch. The brain's really calling the shots here. But what about the other side of things? The physical stimulation.
Well, the most sensitive area for that is the glans penis, the tip. But here's something fascinating. The brain doesn't actually need to be consciously aware of physical stimulation for an erection to occur.
Seriously. So someone could be touched and their body could react even if their brain isn't totally registering it.
That's right.
How is that even possible?
It all comes down to reflex pathways. It's kind of like when the doctor taps your knee and your leg jerks. Your body responds without your brain needing to think about it.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's still pretty mind-blowing. So if the brain doesn't always have to be involved, what is controlling the process?
Well, the key player is the spinal cord. Specifically, the sacral portion erectile function is largely driven by reflexes in this region.
So even if someone has a spinal cord injury, they could still have an erection.
That's right. They might not have sensation, but the reflex can still happen.
Wow.
This really highlights how complex our nervous system is, especially the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system.
Hold on. The same system that handles digestion also controls erections. Talk about a multitasker. How does that even work?
Well, think of it this way. The parasympathetic nervous system is all about those automatic bodily functions that happen without us consciously directing them. Digestion, heart rate regulation, and yes, erections.
So it's like our body's on autopilot.
Yeah.
Taking care of business behind the scenes. Fascinating. But I do remember learning about the importance of testosterone specifically for men. Where does that fit into all of this?
Testosterone. That's crucial. It has such a wide range of effects throughout the body, influencing things like bone health, muscle mass, and, you guessed it, libido and erectile function.
Right. So maintaining healthy testosterone levels is a big deal when it comes to sexual health. Now, to get a clearer picture of how this all works, let's actually dive into the anatomy of the penis itself. What's going on structurally that makes an erection possible?
Well, the magic, so to speak, lies within three cylindrical masses of erectile tissue:
Okay.
the corpus spongiosum and the two corpora cavernosa. The Institute of Human Anatomy video actually describes a cross-section of these as looking alien-like.
Okay, now you've got my attention. So what do these alien-like tissues do?
They each have a specific role to play. The corpus spongiosum, true to its name, is spongy and surrounds the urethra, which carries urine and semen.
So it's like a protective sleeve for the urethra.
Exactly. It keeps the urethra open during an erection, ensuring a clear path for seminal fluid.
Okay.
Now, the real stars of the show are the corpora cavernosa. These contain a network of tiny spaces called blood sinuses, and those are key to the expansion that occurs during an erection.
Okay, so these blood sinuses fill up with blood, and that causes the penis to enlarge and stiffen.
You got it.
Am I getting that right?
You got it. And there's more to it than just those sinuses.
Okay.
The corpora cavernosa also have beams of tissue lined with special cells that regulate blood flow and help maintain the erection.
Wow. There's so much intricate detail packed into such a small space.
Uh-huh.
I'm starting to see how it all comes together. But can you walk me through the actual process? How does an erection actually happen step by step?
Absolutely. Whether it's triggered by something psychological, physical, or a mix of both, the process follows a fascinating sequence.
All right, hit me with the science.
First, signals from either the brain or the genitals travel down the spinal cord, activating specific neurons in the sacral region, levels S2, S3, and S4 to be precise.
Ooh, I'm sensing a mnemonic device coming on.
You know it. S2, 3, 4 keeps the penis off the floor. A bit cheesy, but it helps.
Okay, that one's definitely going to stick with me. But what happens next?
Well, those activated neurons send their extensions, called axons, through the spinal nerves to reach the erectile tissues. Picture them like tiny wires carrying the signal all the way down.
So it's like an electrical circuit, with the spinal cord acting as the power source.
That's a great analogy. And once those signals reach the erectile tissues, they release a powerful neurotransmitter called nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide. Doesn't that have something to do with blood vessels? I vaguely remember that from biology class.
You're on the right track. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, meaning it relaxes and widens blood vessels.
So it's like opening the floodgates, allowing more blood to flow into the penis.
Exactly. And remember those deep arteries we talked about in the corpora cavernosa?
Uh-huh.
Nitric oxide makes them open up, increasing blood flow to those erectile tissues. At the same time, it relaxes the smooth muscle in those tissues, allowing the blood sinuses to expand even more.
So it's a double whammy. More blood flowing in and more room for it to fill.
Clever. It's a beautifully orchestrated process. And as those erectile tissues expand, something else happens. The veins on the top of the penis start to get compressed.
So the blood's rushing in, but it's having a harder time getting out.
Exactly. That compression helps trap the blood within the erectile tissues, which is key for maintaining the erection.
Wow. It really is an ingenious system. It seems like our bodies are designed for this to happen, with all these different elements working together.
It really is. And all this complexity is behind something that's often misunderstood and even stigmatized.
That's a great point. We tend to focus on the outcome, but understanding the intricate biology behind it can make a world of difference.
But speaking of things that are sometimes misunderstood, what about when things don't go as planned? I mean, what happens when an erection ends?
Well, typically an erection ends either through climax or when the stimulation stops. It's like a switch flipping. But the processes involved are equally complex.
I see. So there's a whole other set of mechanisms at play when an erection ends.
Exactly. Different neurotransmitters and physiological changes are involved. But I think before we get into those details, we should probably address a topic that many men struggle with.
Okay.
And that's erectile dysfunction. That's a good point. It's a common issue, but not something people always feel comfortable talking about. So let's unpack that, shall we?
It is a common issue.
It can feel kind of sensitive, though, right? It's something people might be embarrassed to talk about.
Absolutely. And that's a real shame because erectile dysfunction, or ED as it's often called, affects millions of men worldwide, and it can really impact their quality of life.
So let's break down those barriers and talk about it. What actually causes ED? Is it just a matter of getting older?
Well, age can be a factor, but it's not the whole story. ED can stem from a whole range of things, often a mix of physical and psychological issues.
So it's not just all in their head, as some people might say.
Not at all. In fact, lots of physical conditions can contribute to ED, like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, even certain medications.
Wow. So it could actually be a sign of something else going on in the body. That's important to know.
Exactly. That's why it's so important for anyone experiencing ED to talk to their doctor. It could be a signal that something else needs attention.
That makes a lot of sense. But you mentioned the psychological side of things, too. How can that play a role in ED?
Well, think about it. Stress, anxiety, depression, all of these can take a toll on our bodies, including sexual function. Then there are things like relationship problems, performance, anxiety, even just low self-esteem. All of these can contribute.
So it's that mind-body connection again, just like we were talking about with the initiation of an erection.
Precisely. Our mental and emotional states are so deeply intertwined with our physical well-being, and that definitely includes sexual health.
This is all starting to make so much more sense now. So what can someone do if they're experiencing ED? Are there solutions out there?
There absolutely are, and fortunately, we've come a long way in terms of treatment options. Sometimes simple lifestyle changes can make a big difference, like getting regular exercise and eating a healthy diet.
So taking care of your overall health is key here, too.
It's foundational. And beyond lifestyle modifications, there are medications like Viagra and Cialis, which work by enhancing the effects of nitric oxide. Remember how we talked about it relaxes blood vessels?
Right, so they're boosting that vasodilation process, allowing for more blood flow to the penis. That's pretty clever.
It really is. And in more severe cases, there are other options like penile injections or even surgical implants that can help restore erectile function.
It's reassuring to know that there's a whole spectrum of solutions available depending on individual needs. But what about addressing the psychological side of things? What if stress or anxiety are the main culprits?
That's where therapy can be incredibly helpful. Working with a therapist can help unpack issues like anxiety, depression, or relationship dynamics that might be contributing to ED.
So it's about taking a holistic approach, considering both the physical and mental aspects of sexual health.
Exactly. It's multifaceted, and true well-being involves addressing all those different pieces of the puzzle.
Well said. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. From the intricate anatomy of an erection to the complexities of ED and the various treatment options available.
And hopefully this deep dive has given you a greater understanding of this essential aspect of male sexual health.
For sure. Knowledge really is power, and I think we've all learned something new today. Plus, maybe we can even shed a bit of that stigma surrounding these topics.
I hope so. It's all about fostering open, honest conversations about sexual health, free from shame or embarrassment.
Couldn't agree more. Now, before we wrap up this discussion, I want to bring up something that was mentioned in the Institute of Human Anatomy video. They talked about a fascinating parallel between male and female anatomy, specifically the clitoris.
Ah, yes. The clitoris is often overlooked, but it shares some remarkable similarities with the penis when it comes to erectile function.
Really, I have to admit, I don't know a lot about the clitoris beyond the basics.
Well, get ready to be amazed. The clitoris also has erectile tissue, corpora cavernosa, just like the penis, which fills with blood during arousal.
Hold on, so it's not just that small external part, there's more to it beneath the surface.
Absolutely. It actually extends internally, forming a kind of wishbone shape that wraps around the urethra.
Wow, I had no idea. So it's designed for expansion and sensitivity, just like the penis.
Precisely. And just like the penis, it's richly supplied with nerves and blood vessels, making it highly responsive to stimulation.
This is blowing my mind. It really highlights that the biological foundations of sexual pleasure are shared, regardless of gender.
It certainly does. And it underscores the importance of understanding and appreciating the diversity of human anatomy and sexual response.
I think we've stumbled onto a topic that deserves its own deep dive. What do you think?
I completely agree. The clitoris deserves its own time in the spotlight, and there's a wealth of fascinating information to uncover.
Let's put that on the list for a future episode. But for now, I think we've given our listener plenty to think about regarding male sexual health.
For sure. From the interplay of nerves and blood vessels to the psychological and emotional aspects, it's a truly fascinating subject.
And one that should be discussed openly and honestly without any shame or stigma attached.
Exactly. Because knowledge empowers us to understand our bodies and make informed decisions about our health and well-being.
Well said. So to our listener, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the mechanics of an erection. Remember, curiosity is a wonderful thing, and learning about our bodies is a journey that never really ends.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those conversations going.
And until next time, stay curious. Yeah, it really is a journey, huh? The more you learn, the more you realize how much more there is to discover.
It's true. It's really amazing how complex the human body is.
Speaking of amazing, I'm still thinking about what you said about the clitoris. It's crazy how something so important to female sexual pleasure is so often misunderstood or even just plain mysterious.
Yeah, and it really shows how much we need more open and accurate information about female sexual anatomy and function.
Okay, so before we wrap up our deep dive into erections, I think it's worth mentioning that both the clitoris and penis actually share a common developmental origin. Pretty fascinating.
Incredibly fascinating. During fetal development, both structures arise from the same tissue called the genital tubercle.
Wait, so they start out the same and then differentiate?
Exactly.
That's wild.
It really highlights how connected male and female anatomy is. It shows the shared biological foundations of sexuality.
It also makes you wonder, from an evolutionary standpoint, why those structures developed in such different ways.
It's a great question, and scientists and researchers are still intrigued by it. There are a lot of different theories, of course, but it's a complex mix of things like genetics, hormones, and evolutionary pressures.
It's just another reminder that we're always learning and changing our understanding of these topics. But I think for today, we've given our listener a good foundation in how erections work, and maybe sparked some curiosity about female sexual anatomy, too.
I think so. We've looked at the physiological processes, the role of the nervous system, the common challenges like ED, and even touched on those fascinating parallels between male and female anatomy.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation, and I hope our listener feels like they can keep exploring these topics with curiosity and an open mind.
Me too. Knowledge is power, and understanding our bodies is a crucial part of overall well-being.
Well said. So to our listener, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, if you have any concerns about your sexual health, don't hesitate to talk to a healthcare professional.
And never stop asking questions.
Until next time, stay curious.